Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight on Q News, we bring you special in-depth coverage and analysis of two escalating crises, namely the ongoing ceasefire talks and deepening humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, and of course, Israel's intensifying military campaign in Syria to counter threats against the Druze community. We examine the regional stakes, the human toll, and what may lie ahead. Egyptian sources have reported optimism over nearing solutions to four disputed ceasefire terms in Gaza. The Egyptian sources added that these efforts are led directly by Director of the General Intelligence Service, Mr. Hassan Rashad, and Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, coordinated with U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff. The Egyptian sources said that mediators are working to overcome obstacles in negotiations among involved parties. That comes as Egypt and Qatar agree on the necessity of a ceasefire agreement that ensures humanitarian aid delivery and the release of detainees. At least 20 Palestinians have died in a stampede at an aid center in southern Gaza, as tensions over food distribution continue to rise amid the ongoing conflict. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or the GHF, said 19 people were trampled and one was stabbed during a crush at its Khan Yunis center on Wednesday. The U.S.-backed group, which also receives Israeli support, blamed armed elements within the crowd, allegedly linked to Hamas, for inciting the chaos. Hamas has denied the claims, calling them false and accusing the GHF and Israeli military of responsibility. Witnesses described being trapped after guards locked the gates and used pepper spray, forcing people against fences and causing some to collapse and get crushed. Displaced Palestinians in Gaza have rejected an Israeli proposal to relocate them to the so-called humanitarian city, insisting on returning to their homes in the Palestinian Rafah despite ongoing conflict. The plan, floated by Defense Minister Israel Katz earlier this month, proposes moving hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to a designated zone inside Gaza, while Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's administration says it aims to provide civilians with a safe haven and weaken Hamas. Critics warn it could resemble a concentration camp and amount to ethnic cleansing. Doctors in Khan Yunis are treating rising numbers of starving children as UNRWA warns malnutrition is sharply increasing in Gaza under Israel's ongoing siege. At Al-Nasser Hospital's pediatric department in Khan Yunis, doctors say that they are admitting 6 to 10 severely malnutrition children each day. Dr. Sarah Freih described the dire situation, noting a surge in cases since March, when Israel further tightened its blockade on the enclave. A mother caring for her 5-month-old baby at the hospital said she had witnessed 3 other malnutritioned children die. UNRWA's Director of Communication, Julia Tuma, confirmed that health teams have reported a steady rise in malnutrition across Gaza, warning that the crisis threatens to claim more young lives if aid access remains restricted. Meanwhile, Israeli military operations in Gaza have caused severe damage to historic and cultural sites, threatening Palestinian heritage and identity, according to UNESCO and local observers. The ongoing conflict has destroyed or severely damaged ancient mosques, churches, markets, and museums, many of which date back thousands of years and serve as vital symbols of Palestinian civilization. UNESCO reports that at least 110 archaeological and cultural sites have been affected since the escalation began in October 2023. Observers warn that the destruction poses a grave threat to Gaza's historical legacy, further erasing cultural landmarks that embody Palestinian identity. Loud explosions lit up Gaza early on Wednesday as ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas in Doha showed little progress, raising fears of further escalation. Blasts and heavy strikes were seen from southern Israel into Gaza as negotiations continue on a U.S.-backed proposal for a 60-day ceasefire. Talks, which began on July the 6th, include plans for a phased release of hostages, partial Israeli troop withdrawals, and discussions to end the conflict. However, recent optimism for a breakthrough has faded, with mediators warning that gaps remain wide. Repeated Israeli attacks in recent weeks have killed hundreds of Palestinians, many of them civilians, and injured thousands, according to the Gaza health officials. The Palestinian death toll in Gaza has climbed to over 58,000 since October, with nearly 140,000 injured as Israeli military operations continue to claim lives daily, according to Gaza health officials. Gaza's health authorities reported on Tuesday that 58,479 Palestinians have been killed and 139,355 injured since the conflict erupted in October 2023. In the past 24 hours alone, 93 people were killed and 278 wounded, including 6 who died while seeking aid at distribution centers. The UN Human Rights Office says that at least 875 Palestinians have died over the past 6 weeks while attempting to access humanitarian aid, including 201 along convoy routes and 674 near sites operated by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. For further analysis, we're joined from Jordan by the military and strategic expert, Dr. Nidal Abu Zaid. Welcome to Q News, Dr. Nidal. Now, what are the main obstacles still preventing a final ceasefire agreement despite recent Egyptian and Qatari mediation efforts?
Yes. First of all, thanks indeed for this meeting.
Actually,
when we are talking about the negotiation in Qatar, I think what happened in Syria today is covering about the casualties of the Israeli army in Gaza, so that all the indications indicate that all the negotiation is close to be agreement about between two sides, the resistance and between the Israeli side also. So that I can say maybe we are in the last steps for the agreement between the two sides, not only because the Israeli want that, but also because the casualties of the Israeli is a start to catch for the what is called in the military critical point. I mean, it start to be at the 35%, the casualties of the divisions. This is mean in the doctrine or in the military doctrine, the military decision have to stop the war or to withdraw the divisions. But the Israelis, they don't have any fresh divisions to send it back again to Gaza. So that I think all the military indications and political indications indicate that the negotiation in the last step between both sides.
And, sir, do you believe the current ceasefire proposal, which includes phased troop withdrawals and detainee releases, adequately addresses the core demands of both sides?
Yes, I think the resistance in Gaza can fight more and more against the Israeli, but the Israelis have a big problem. They are coming with the traditional troops to fight in a traditional way against the untraditional resistance in Gaza. So that this is a strategic crisis, push the Israelis to be back again to the negotiation and back again to the agreement. Mm-hmm. What is support this point is the military and generals, Israeli military and generals, is support the politicians to go to this agreement.
Mm-hmm. And what are the risks of further escalation if negotiations in Doha fail, especially considering, of course, the heavy Israeli strikes and worsening humanitarian crisis as well?
Yes, I think if it's failed, that means the Israelis will go to the military escalation again to Gaza, but is they are can or they are can't to fight or escalate for the long time. I think for the or all the indications indicate that the Israeli army and Israeli troops in Gaza can't fight for a long time again. And also, to be honest, the resistance can't fight for a long time, so that both sides, they need the agreement in this time.
Mm-hmm. And how might Egypt's and Qatar's coordinated mediation shape the regional balance of power and influence future peace or reconstruction efforts in Gaza?
I think Egypt have a project, and this project, Egyptian project, is supported by the regional countries and by the international also. The Egyptian project has support the humanitarian, support the civilian in Gaza, and they are refused any escalation from the Israeli side. So that I said the suitable solution in Gaza, that all or both sides in Gaza is stuck with the Egyptian projection, and also in Qatar is support this political negotiation, so that I can say that there is a regional support for the agreement and there is international support for the agreement, but there is a difference between the international support, which is coming by the Witkoff, so that they are support the Israeli by the weapons and support the Israeli to cover them by the politicians, as we said before in the International Council or Security Council, when the Americans was used the veto 7 times to support and to cover the Israeli from the agreement.
And sir, how do you assess the credibility of claims that armed elements incited the deadly stampede at the Gaza Aid Center, and what does this say about the overall security situation?
I think this step, which is supported by the Israeli army and by the Israeli troops, which is called in the strategic ways as the vigilant group or watching group. It's used before in many countries. For example, it's used in Iraq, for example, which is, but in the history, this kind of groups or the armed groups, which is supported by the enemies, is not succeeded anyway. So that I think this group, which is working now in Rafah and working somehow in some places in Qnews, will not succeed it, first of all. And second, I think after the ceasefire, I think the resistance will be fight with those group. They know very well this support for the Israelis to them. They will not be for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Nidal, what are the potential humanitarian and legal implications of Israel's proposed humanitarian city in Gaza, and why are so many people, displaced Palestinians, rejecting it?
First of all, this humanitarian areas, which is talking about it by the Israeli, it's very hard to be because, as the Israeli general said, it need a long time first, and second, it need 15 million shekel. So that I think there is many circumstances will not support this humanitarian area. Second thing, Egypt is not support and refuse. I will not talking not support, but Egypt is refuse this humanitarian areas because it's not support the Gaza people, and also it is maybe make a humanitarian crisis, not solve the humanitarian issues in Gaza.
Of course. Well, that was Dr. Nidal Abu Zaid from Jordan, the military and strategic expert. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. And now we turn to Syria, where Israeli airstrikes have intensified amid fierce clashes in Suwayda between government forces and Druze fighters. Israel vows to protect Druze communities as tensions threaten to ignite wider regional conflict. Egypt has strongly condemned Israel's repeated attacks on Lebanese and Syrian territories, viewing them as blatant violations of their sovereignty, international law, and UN resolutions. In a statement by the Foreign Ministry, Cairo emphasized the critical importance of respecting both nations' sovereignty and territorial integrity, rejecting any interference in their internal affairs. That comes as these ongoing Israeli violations exacerbate regional tensions, undermining stability amid crucial Egyptian-backed international de-escalation efforts. Syria has vehemently condemned Israel's treacherous strikes on government institutions and civilian sites in Damascus and Suwayda, causing civilian deaths, injuries, including women and children, and severe infrastructure damage. The Syrian Foreign Ministry added that this deliberate aggression aims to incite chaos, undermine security, and violates the UN Charter and international humanitarian law. The statement added that Syria holds Israel fully accountable for this dangerous escalation and asserts its right to self-defense under international law. The Syrian Foreign Ministry urges the international community, especially the UN Security Council, to take immediate action to halt Israel's repeated aggressions against Syria's sovereignty. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio voiced deep concern over Israeli strikes on Syria, saying that Washington is actively engaging with relevant parties to help reduce tensions. Speaking today, Secretary Rubio said that he had just finished calls with involved parties regarding the recent Israeli strikes on Syrian territory. He stressed that the U.S. is very concerned about the situation and is working to address it urgently. The remarks come as clashes erupted between Syrian government forces and local Druze fighters shortly after a ceasefire was announced. Rubio reiterated that Washington seeks an immediate end to the fighting and promised further updates as diplomatic efforts continue. Israel has released footage of airstrikes on Damascus targeting Syria's defense ministry as tensions escalate over attacks on Druze communities in the south. Today, powerful airstrikes shook Damascus as the Israeli military said it struck Syrian defense ministry sites. The Israeli army stated that the strikes aimed to stop Syrian government forces from attacking Druze communities in southern Syria and demanded their immediate withdrawal. Footage released by the Israeli military showed what it claims are precision strikes on key targets in the Syrian capital. The escalation underscores rising regional tensions as Israel vows to continue operations to protect Druze populations and deter further Syrian military actions. Syrian forces clashed with Druze fighters in Suwayda today as shelling forced residents to shelter indoors and authorities warned of further violence. Syrian security forces were seen checking vehicles at checkpoints across Suwayda after being deployed to the region on Monday to stop fighting between Druze fighters and Bedouin armed men. Instead, government troops ended up in direct clashes with Druze militias. Local outlet Suwayda 24 reported heavy artillery and mortar fire hitting the city and nearby villages early on Wednesday. Syria's defense ministry, through state news agency SANA, blamed outlaw groups for violating the truce and urged residents to remain indoors. Many residents said that they were trapped at home without electricity, fearful of venturing outside. The spiritual leader of Israel's Druze community, Muwaffaq Tarif, has demanded striking the Syrian regime to force its withdrawal from Suwayda, calling the conflict existential. He affirmed the commitment of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz to act. Meanwhile, Syria's Druze spiritual leader urged regional and international intervention to calm Suwayda. Katz vowed continued Israeli strikes on Syrian forces until they retreat, warning of escalated responses if ignored. Recent clashes reignited between Syrian government troops and local Druze fighters shortly after a ceasefire announcement. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has stated that Israel is actively working to eliminate threats against its security in southern Syria. He accused the Syrian regime of hostile actions targeting minorities and emphasized Israel's firm stance against any harm to the Druze community in Syria. He underscored the desire to maintain the current status quo along the Syrian border and affirmed Israel's commitment to defending the Druze to bolster its own national security.
Have names and faces. We demand that they stand trial for their crimes against.
Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has declared that warning messages to Damascus have ended and harsh strikes will now be executed. Katz affirmed the military's commitment to operate forcefully in Suwayda province in Syria. The Israeli defense minister vowed to destroy all the forces that attacked the Druze community until they fully withdraw. Israel's stance signals a significant escalation in its military campaign aimed at securing Druze safety and pressuring Syrian government forces to retreat from the region.
והסינואר השני יחריב אותה לחלוטין. תקיפת חיל האוויר נגד מחבלי החמאס הייתה רק הצעד הראשון. ההמשך יהיה קשה בהרבה, ואתם תשלמו את מלוא...
And for further analysis, we're joined from Beirut by the military and strategic expert, Brigadier General Adel El-Mashmoushi. Welcome to Q News. Sir, what are the main risks of Israel's expanded military campaign in Syria, spiraling into a broader regional conflict, especially given, of course, the involvement of Druze communities?
Good evening and hello everyone. Actually, what's going on in Syria is very, very dangerous to everyone on the regional level and in Syria too. It will dismantle the Syrian people and will enhance the other tribes, and this is very dangerous. This results in dismantling the same people and actually this turning into a regional war. No, I don't think this will happen. There is a huge difference in the Israeli occupation military and the Syrian military, especially after what Israel has done with a purpose to dismantle all the Syrian forces, because the Syrian military has been was over after everything that happened. Israel is aiming to announce itself the leader in the Middle East, and it says it protects the Jews, but they don't need the Jews to protect themselves from their uh, counter-likes in the same country. And but actually Israel wants from Jews, they want it to be like they want to use it to attack Syria, and this is very dangerous because, as I said, it will cause differences in the Syrian people, and maybe it will push the Jews to ask for further things, and this signals the end of Syria, knowing that the Syrian people is united for many years. And actually the Jews in Syria, as it's said, they were the first ones to protect Syria against the French occupation, like what happened with Jenin al-Atras when he faced the occupation forces. And I hope that the leaders will be wise either in Palestine or in Syria. I want them to actually realize what Israel is pushing them to do.
And sir, how credible is Israel's justification for striking Syrian government sites to protect Jewish populations, and how might this be perceived internationally?
Actually, in here, they wanna have a good relationship between Syria and Israel, and this is Israel's aim. But they wanna add something further. They want to have like a line between Syria and the occupied Palestinian grounds. And I think that the strikes that Israel has done, especially those targeted at the presidential building, this is a message that we are sending now military forces to those regions, and I think this is what pushed the Syrian government to withdraw their forces and having others. And I think that the military forces, maybe they are dealing with good manners with the civilians, but the military is dealing in a good way too, especially that most of the military is from civilians. And as I said, they need to be responsibility, they need to be wise and not go after their instinct to fight, because this might not only be on Syria, and maybe it will happen to neighboring countries like Iraq.
Sir, what leverage does the United States have to actually de-escalate tensions between Israel and Syria, given Secretary Rubio's expressed concerns?
The United States actually, I think they want to have the relations be good between the Syrian government and Israel actually will benefit from that, because the US claims that they are pressuring Israel to not strike the government and keep that government intact, and they claim that they are protecting that regime, but actually Israel wants to keep the regime. They want to have they claim to want a truce, but Israel also wants to create disabilities in those countries. And so Israel actually is dealing they're balancing between the good relations. That's why they didn't actually target the regime directly, and they presented themselves as the protectant of the Jews. But again, I say this is very dangerous and needs to stop very, very soon. And I'm calling for all Middle East presidents before things go south further and
Yes.
they become out of control.
Yes. Well, that was Brigadier General Adel El-Mashmoushi from Beirut, military and strategic expert. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. Now, as tensions continue to rise, the region watches closely for what comes next. We'll keep following these developments and bring you, of course, the latest updates here on Q News. I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi. Thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EG to stay informed.